Thanks to all of you that you came even after we had to swap the dates due to BVG strike last week. And we fortunately picked today and not tomorrow, because tomorrow we would have the same problem. But yeah, thanks for coming anyways. Before we dive into the questions, I would like, because I guess Erik can introduce himself way better than I could, so maybe Erik, you can, for those of you who don't know him, give a very short introduction of your life story.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. Thanks for the invitation. I think it's a great event. I was thinking earlier today, without reflecting on tonight's event, that one of the key things would be to have more technical people build companies, and it's one of the key differences, I think, when you look at the US and Europe. So anyway, because you asked for the introduction, I'm from the northeast of Germany. My family was born in the GDR, and I have lots of memories from that time. My grandfather used to say, don't go to the US, there's only evil people there. Obviously, he had a very Eastern perspective on those situations, on this country. I studied computer science because I always loved to build things, and I started programming early. By accident, I got pulled into becoming CTO of a company called Daily Deal. When I was still studying, I was approached by the two founders who said, hey, so this is 2009 in Germany, and they said, hey, we need a CTO, we need someone to pretend to be the CTO so we can raise money. And so that, I mean, at that time you raised like 200K for 20% or something like that, kind of a ridiculous amount from today's perspective. And I said, yeah, sure. I mean, you sound fun, put my face on your pitch deck. And I ended up becoming like the tech leader there. And that pulled me into the startup world. It was e-commerce, maybe not the crazy, most exciting thing, but I loved how we had so much energy, so much intrinsic motivation, what we could get done, how investors would give us money to build something. It was completely crazy to me, my 19-year-old me. And that pulled me to the startup scene. I ended up building two more companies after that. One was big data platform in 2011 called Cloud Numbers, where essentially the idea was you could describe it as a logo for big data. So clouds were just coming around, and we wanted to build a push-button solution to push big data workloads from your local computer into the cloud and make that really easy. I also afterwards built a bootstrapped app business, which didn't work out so well. And in 2015, then started Forto, which is still a digital freight forwarder, where we help customers ship sea freight from A to B around the world, but we'll speak a bit more about that, I think. So
yes, thanks. And you already mentioned that you started programming early. Do you have, you usually ask this everyone, so do you have like a magic moment, some background story on how you got into computers, or what your first touch point with technologies were, or some interesting?
I think the magic moments, my father was so nice to, at that time, to 1990 something, Aldi had really good computers. I don't know who knows that still, but you could buy like full computer sets from Aldi, which would include the monitor, a really good computer from Medion, crazy, right? Including a keyboard and everything. And so somehow we bought that, and I just got addicted to the computer. And the second magic moment was like Windows 98, obviously great games, Age of Empires 2, and all those things, and I would just play a lot of games. And at one point I wanted to do more, and we were again in an Aldi store, and they sell a few things which are non-grocery. Like sometimes they have a book or like underwear and such stuff, right? So there was a book called HTML, and I think I was 14 or so at the time. I thought it was interesting, and also nice to buy it. And then I started to code HTML. I wanted to make it dynamic because I built this form, I pressed submit all the time, and like no email got sent and nothing happened, and I tried to figure out how can we now actually have some back-end logic. I went to the bookstore and asked the guy in the bookstore how I can make this website dynamic. Why I'm saying that it's so crazy how our kids, I have 2 kids now, and how our kids, when they want to do something, cannot just ask the internet, but ChatGPT to almost give them the solution. In my time, in like the early 2000s, you had to go to the bookstore, and obviously the guy had no clue about programming, but he gave me the PHP book, and it was so hard and took so much time to really get something off the ground. But those were the 2 moments, I think.
And this naturally led to you studying computer science, or was there some other subject you looked into? No,
it was just
always computer science. Okay, got it. And now moving way forward to Forto, which was the recent company you've built. What drew you to this logistics as a problem space? What's the origin story of this? I mean, I would guess it's a problem space where you would need to have some industry know-how. How do you get going as a tech founder? What's the background story there?
Yeah. So I had been the CTO of this company called AD, where we sold vouchers. That was really cool because they sold the company after 1.5 years to Google, so that was kind of a crazy ride. But I also knew selling vouchers online is not exactly super exciting, right? Then I moved on to build a B2B business, which I enjoyed much more. And it was again venture-backed, and I moved on to build a bootstrapped app agency. So I had seen bootstrapped, VC funded, B2C, B2B, and at that time I had a good feeling that I wanted to do B2B, I wanted to venture-back, because I feel the most limited resource we have is lifetime, and if you want to build something big, you have to, there's many risks that you don't see. The unknown unknowns, and so the way to see them fast is to accelerate you sort of hitting them. So I wanted to get venture money to be on the road just very fast. So I knew roughly what I wanted to do. I had a meta-level framework, and then when you want to go to B2B and you're just left university, there's obviously very few markets. You have a good idea about where to go, what to do. So we just said, okay, let's be very analytical about it. And use all kinds of sources to get ideas. We downloaded big market databases, which would list like 2,500 different markets, like used car dealership, residential home building, coal mining, all those things. And those market databases tell you things like what's the market size, some say what's the degree of fragmentation, what's the average EBIT, what's the average growth rate the last 5 years, what's the average growth rate the next 5 years. And we just went through that and thought, what sounds interesting? Where do we feel there's not a lot of companies that have been built? What is something you can do from Europe? And so it was like a funnel, and we trimmed down the number of markets. We started to talk to people, approach people cold on LinkedIn, ask them, hey, we want to build a company. Can you give us 15 minutes of your time to interview you? And I ended up with 2-3 ideas. And that was a very analytical process. And I realized at one point that, for me, I realized at this point, okay, we have 3 ideas that look great on paper, but you also need to love what you do. And it was always really important for me because I was really product focused. And of those 3 ideas, kind of freight forwarding logistics was the only one where I felt close attachment. I don't know why. My father was a seafarer on a Lloyd vessel. I love sailing. I would have studied economics maybe if it wouldn't have been computer science. So I mean, I have a natural personality, bound inclination towards global trade. And I think it's just really cool here in Hamburg. You see the huge cranes, you see a Boeing 747 freighter open its nose, spit out 200 tons of cargo that just came from Shanghai. How cool is it if you can build an API that just did that? So yeah, that was also another
Okay. And you mentioned we, so you weren't alone founding this. I know a lot of people in this ecosystem, especially also from the tech side, who are maybe willing to found a company but are alone. What was your background story in founding a company, and what would be your tip for someone who's looking to build a company but has no co-founders?
All the companies I founded with friends. What the great thing about the friends thing is you know the people mostly really well, and it will be a really, really intense relationship where you see all the positive sides, but also all the negative sides of the other person. So it's really great if you know someone really well. I think you should be aware that maybe your friendship will develop into a different direction. I think for all of those friendships, they have changed. I think we all recover to a real friendship afterwards, but during that time, you find that sometimes you don't want to maybe spend as much time anymore together in your private time, because you've already been working 14 hours together every day. So it's something you should be aware of, to a point where I'd say today, maybe, and now I've built a new company since a few weeks, and I'm doing it alone, and I wouldn't do it again with my best friends, because I know I'll kind of lose them as best friends. Back to the co-founder question, I think these days, that didn't exist at that time, there's great sort of matching platforms. I'm not super up to date what that is. But in any case, if you're looking for a co-founder, what I always do is just spend a little of time, test work together. There is great co-founder questionnaires out there from Y Combinator, First Round. The questions are really, really good. It makes sense to go through all of them. And it's a good start to get to know each other more.
Okay. When you look at your time at Forto, what would you say was, or if there was, your biggest, as a team maybe, engineering, architecture mistake that you've done, and how long did it take to fix it, and what were the problems?
Yeah. Maybe we should introduce Forto again real quick.
Yeah.
So the company we built in 2015 called Forto. We went in and looked at a bunch of industries, and one of the things we looked at was global freight forwarding, which essentially means shipping sea freight and air freight around the world. And so logistics is crazy because it's one of the biggest industries in the world. In Germany, for example, it's 7% of GDP. There is logistics and energy cost in every single product. And this has been moved from A to B, this has been moved from A to B, everything, because nothing is produced here in the basement. So it's a really, really prevalent industry that touches our lives every day. And on the other side, it's crazy how archaic, old school, paper-based it is. There is no structured APIs. Everything is email communication. There is no any kind of integrations. And we felt there is an ability to build a tech-first logistics player that would insert technology at every element of the stack, instead of having to send a fax at that time 10 years ago for a quote request of what's the container from Shanghai to Hamburg. Just type it in online, Shanghai to Hamburg, you get a price. Have a self-service portal to know where's your container, and if Suez is blocked, you see how it's sailing around Cape Horn and so on. Automate things on the back end. And we ended up building a freight forwarding company with a very strong tech element, so a little bit like, yeah. What were the biggest architectural mistakes there? I think a huge challenge for us at the time was that we had no clue about the industry and no clue about the domain, and we built the first product, and I think we should have deleted the code after 1 year and rebuilt it. There is this famous article about the big refactoring that never happens, and I think it's true, unfortunately. But I think, when you really have no clue about the industry, you obviously have to start with a lot of assumptions. You should really be very, very mindful. And I think the outcome for Forto is we cornered our architecture and our data model and our way of thinking to in a very, very specific way. I don't want to go into the details here because it's very specific, but it kind of still to this point prevents us doing the business we sometimes want to do. And I think the way to fix that would have been to, again, completely rethink our first code base. I think we throw it away again. That's what I tell my engineers in my new company, like be proud to delete code again. But also maybe work together with more domain experts that really understand the field much better, so you can come up with a better domain design. That's a really big topic, I think, that we should improve a lot.
And we already mentioned that around 1.5 years ago you kind of stepped down from your operative role, and you also mentioned that you're now building a new company. So maybe 2 questions. What was the reason back then, and why the hell are you founding again and going into the most stressful job again?
The most stressful job is always having kids and not founding a company. So I left Forto in very good terms because of a few things that came together. You don't just leave your own business or your own baby in a way. Sort of baby. I think, I realized that I genuinely enjoy the 0 to 1 stage a lot. And Forto was, and I genuinely enjoy sort of the combination of being out with the customer, thinking creatively about how you can innovate, building a business. And I felt Forto at that time was at a point where we had close to 1,000 people. The roadmap was rather clear almost for the next 2-3 years, you could say. My job was a lot about management and a little bit less. GenAI wasn't around yet, so there was no need to set up big innovation teams and do crazy new fancy things. So it was very linear in a way. And maybe it sounds disrespectful, I think it's a very challenging job, and I think there's few people that can do it really well, but I didn't find myself genuinely enjoying it all, because I always came for building a great product, and less for the management and the hiring and setting plans and doing OKR meetings. I just don't love it as much. I accepted it as part of my job. I tried to also delegate it very quickly when I could, but again, it's not something I genuinely really loved. And I found at the same time I had a really great team to hand over. We were also becoming first-time parents, and then those things came together and I decided to take a break, hand over to to Camille, who's now CPTO at Forto, who's doing a really great job, and I started thinking again.
And what are you doing now? So what's the new thing? Can you give us an insight in which direction it will go? Yeah, what is it about?
Yeah, one of the things. So a little bit unfinished business for me is that 10 years ago when we started Forto, we thought we can really automate a lot in this industry. I think we have not achieved by far as much as we wanted to. I think we've achieved a lot of good stuff, and Forto is a very good company and makes customers really, really happy. But, so if you should ever see Fred, you should certainly go to Forto. But internally, I'm not crazy happy about the amount of automation we've been able to achieve. And the reason is that everything is email. You know, you import a container for a customer, you ship shoes, okay? And then the ship arrives in 10 days and we'll reach out to you and say, hey, Bela, so your container arrives in 10 days and when do you want to have it? Do you want to have it on the April 10th, 11th or 12th? Between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. we can deliver it. And we send this to you via email. Why? Because we could send you like a calendar link or something like that, but you will not use that because you also use other logistics companies and you don't want to have, you want to get used to the portal of all logistics companies that you work with. So you want to have an email from us. That's the first thing that made it hard. Then you might, agree to a date, but then you come back one day later because your boss said, you need the container early. We have to replan everything. Then we think we're set, and then the ship comes late. You replan everything because the ship comes late. Then close before the arrival, the ship comes early. We replan everything again. Then you think you're set, and suddenly customs authorities reject the goods entering the European Union. So you replan everything again, and you have to escalate that. So the real world is really, really messy, and we never really found a way, not only to deal with the email piece, that was obviously hard to achieve pre-GenAI, but we also never really found a way to encode the workflow of the operator, the human operator, the Speditionskaufmann in German, the operations clerk. We never found a way to encode what they were doing with any of these Turing-complete methodologies to program a computer pre-GenAI. No code, low code, UiPath, RPA, all those things affect software engineering is all the same, just with a different interface, of course. And the problem with all these ways to program a computer is they're just not expressive enough for the real world, and they're just held back. Now everything is different, because with GenAI we can obviously unlock a lot, and the two key unlocks, I think, to try exactly what I described to automate that again are, we can obviously automate emails in a much better way. I mean, we can write simplified Chinese and French and German, and we can write that better than any human could. But more importantly, I think a machine is able to now finally drive the workflow forward because we can, first of all, construct it with natural language, and it has an intelligent way to pattern match situations, and effectively what we're now doing is we're building agents to orchestrate the global flow of goods that can process more information, respond to customer requests faster, and ultimately, I think, deliver freight from A to B cheaper than humans ever could.
And as Forto, you're building this company from Europe, so why have you decided to not only build your first one, but also now the next one built here, and not how everyone is saying in the US, go there, it's so much easier, it's so hard here.
Yeah, the B4B strike makes me struggle with that decision sometimes. But okay. My honest perspective is, it's probably, there's a higher likelihood of succeeding when you're in San Francisco. It's the reality. There's no matter what people say on LinkedIn, I really love that reinstated European pride and the push for, I think, but let's face it, that it is easier to build something in this app because there's more capital, more talent, that you can hire faster, the market is bigger, and there's slightly less bureaucracy, which is also helpful. But it is also really important for me to leave something behind that is bigger than my own wallet at the end. If I were 23 and I want to learn and grow fast, I think it makes sense to go abroad for a few years and learn. But I think I am convinced that the societal architecture in Europe, with all its flaws at the moment, we have to get a lot of things right again, is the best. Because when you ever leave San Francisco, I love the people in the US, but it's completely fucked up with regards to education and inequality and so on. And I don't really want to raise a family there. I think I wouldn't want to build a community in that country, which is alienating at this point. The way people talk and the way policy develops, etc. And the quality of life is super high here. I think it's the best societal architecture. And I feel my wife and I were discussing it a lot. She's in VC and she's a partner in the fund, and we feel a strong responsibility to give back to this ecosystem and make sure that we also build global champions that come from Europe, because the only way we can sustain our way of life going forward. We have to get our seat at the table back, and the only way to try to do that is by trying to build global champions that deeply ingrain our values that we have in Europe, even if it's much harder.
Okay, and I have the feeling, and you can correct me, and this is maybe a question, that there is some sort of momentum due to all these geopolitical changes and how the US is kind of a little bit breaking up the Western unions. Do you see this momentum? Is there really, or is it like my Twitter bubble that sees this?
No, I think it's there. I think there is a bunch of people that I see also saying, hey, it's probably better to go to the US for my own success, but it's not sort of the kind of model I want to live in, and so I'll make a conscious decision to stay here. And if you want to stay here and still build something globally successful, I think you have to try to also find new ways of doing it. We are not yet sure what that means for us. We're trying to build a global company that benchmarks itself globally, becomes a category leader from here, which is not exactly easy. What we're trying to do is, so I'm in San Francisco every quarter just to be there, talk to the people, get exposed to the hustle, see the energy, see the level of ambition, see the vision. As a company, we relocate every November, the whole company, to work from a bunch of Airbnbs that we rent together, because I also want the first team to be exposed to, again, the hustle, the energy, the ambition, and the investors, the casual conversation. You suddenly meet the first designer of ChatGPT, who is the goalkeeper in the soccer team that you work in, and this serendipity to expose everyone to that, I think is really important. We have, of our 4 clients that we have at this point, 2 are international, so I just need to fly a lot, I guess. We benchmark ourselves with the San Francisco standards, and then we hope to also be able to build a globally leading outcome from that.
10 years ago, what would you say is the biggest switch that you've seen? Not in terms of like just an improvement from year to year, but like has something changed, or is it just?
Yeah, I think a lot has changed, and one of the things that has changed a lot is I think the people around you. 10 years ago, and where I really noticed that was building cloud numbers, that was more like 14 years ago, and you just had so few people here who would be able to tell you how to build a product or like tech company. One of our investors in the business, Cloud Numbers, this sort of big data cloud solution. He has a business background. I really love him. He's great. But we were building this big data solution, and he recommended us to build the sales team with like WHU interns. And like all the WHU people at the private business university I know from Germany, They're really great, really hardworking, really smart, but you can't sell an enterprise big data product with like interns from that university. It just doesn't work. But I think it's more or less the only model he had seen, and because he'd only ever been doing e-commerce before, it was kind of, you know, his way of recommending, and he was also young at that point, I guess, right? But it was his way of recommending to us and saying, hey, I just, you know, try it like that. That's how all my companies do it. Maybe it's a small example, but I think there were just very, very few role models, very few people to talk to, that you would just colloquially meet in Berlin and say, hey, how do you build a growth engine? How do you think about product market fit? How do you build a tech team? Who to hire? What's a great head of engineering? And so on. It was really, really hard to find those people, and I think that changed a lot. Plus, I also find that there's a much stronger connection somehow to San Francisco now, and somehow the ecosystem still use much more.
If you would have the chance to switch the lever for one thing on a regulatory scale in Europe, what do you think is the most important thing to change?
Regulatory scale, yeah.
I mean, because I think a lot of the differences is also cultural, but it's very, very hard to change, and it's a very long-lasting process. So, but if you would be, I don't know, the next frontline Commission President in Europe, even if maybe this person doesn't even have the power to do such thing,
yeah.
But if he or she would, what would be the biggest leverage?
I think the biggest lever indeed is, I think, cultural change. You know, many people say it's so hard to found a company in Germany, it's so bureaucratic. Yeah, it's bureaucratic, we have to go to the notary next Tuesday, but honestly, it's not what makes the difference between like you finding product market fit or not. Okay, that one appointment in notary, okay, maybe you have to send 10 letters to the bank. It's painful, but it's exactly 1.5 days in total over 10 years, you know. So I don't think that's actually a problem. So I think it is a little bit culturally that everyone maybe is we're a little bit too slow. I think we should be much more ambitious. I think there should be much more, ideally, openness. I think also from the industry and the market to buy solutions faster. We're trying to push our AI solution now out. I find sort of very waterfally at times how bigger enterprises start to look at AI. The first questions we always get are, where do you store your data? Is it safe? Will you suddenly use your... I mean, it's always sort of the very negative way to look at AI. So I think a big leader would be cultural. Because you asked about policy, I think the EU just really needs to stop regulating everything. It's such a pain in the ass. From the AI Act over, in my mind, GDPR, which is completely over-regulated. And I'm not really sure how filling out forms really helps anyone. So they really need to stop doing that.
And maybe moving over to more of the AI stuff, as we call it, AI fireside chat. A few questions on AI. First one, a very short one. What's your right now go-to chatbot?
OpenAI for everything that I work on, and Claude for everything more technical.
And do you have any a little bit more under the radar AI tool that you use that you can recommend that is maybe not Cursor or like a little bit more under the radar maybe?
Yeah, we really like to use, in our stack, what do we like to use? We really like Infuse at the moment. We really like, I personally really love Claude with sort of these MCP, with sort of MCP, with MCP add-ins, or how do you just say it, extensions, add-ons. Anyway, Claude using MCP exposed tools, because I think that finally unlocks what I always wanted. The AI is obviously super smart, but if it has no context, it's of so little value. That's something I really like to see at the moment. We use a lot of Crea for trying to generate our logo. I think we might end up being a real designer, let's see. But these are a few of the things we use at the moment.
And how do you think AI, and especially AI in engineering organizations, also maybe from your experience now in your new company, is changing the way that early stage companies hire and pick their first developers that they're hiring?
Yeah. So I think first of all, you try to build smaller teams because you can get so much more done, and every person you add there's a lot of overhead. I'd rather pay $6,000 to Vercel or some AI and not hire an additional headcount, although it's the same price. Because you're still much faster, you have to communicate less, less alignment, less all that, less hiring. Second, I think there are some interesting engineers now on the market who haven't been engineers a year ago or 2 years ago. And for example, I see people who've been product managers or more like the more interested classical business profiles who suddenly can actually contribute to your code base. And maybe they will never be the crazy core engineer you're looking for, but there's a lot of value, especially early stage, to bring in people who enjoy being out with the customer every day. Maybe you have something like a forward deployed engineering organization like us from the get-go, where it's really valuable to bring in people that have a strong project management, product and design component. And if they now are able to also code, that can be a really valuable addition to the team. So we try to only hire people that can code, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they've always been an engineer the last 10 years. So those are the two elements I think how changed for us.
And maybe last question from my side before we head over to the Q&A, so you can already think about a question. What is your personal favorite AI company in Europe that you're maybe not directly affiliated with, if that's possible?
My favorite, what is favorite for you?
What means favorite for you?
I don't know. I think, I'm not sure if there's a favorite. I do, you said not affiliated, so I have to sort of can't take it into account now, but I'm really impressed by, for example, Parloa from Berlin and how they're building, I think, what seems to be like one of the category leaders, if not the category leader for conversational AI, for contact centers, call centers. It's really great, really impressive. And they're building a great team. I would hope that sort of Mistral, who I put a lot of hope in, gets a little bit back on the track of also building competitive models when it comes to cutting edge reasoning, because I think it's really important we have sort of also a value aligned model from Europe and not just from China and the US. So those are two companies that come to mind.
Do you think, because you mentioned Mistral and maybe there's also 11 Labs, one of the other like big research hubs from Europe, do you think they actually have a chance?
It seems like DeepSeek was built on significantly less resources, probably still much more than they claim, but still much more resource efficient. Europe will probably not win by now trying to outcompete the US or China with a number of category leaders or forerunners, but if we're in many dimensions just really fast followers, will be good enough, I think, to build a society where people can be happy, where you have economic growth every year, and where we, based on that, also don't have as much right-wing parties anymore. So if Mistral was able to build a GPT-4o or O1, whatever kind of model category competitor that is close enough, I think would be really important.
Okay, thanks a lot. Maybe we have some questions from the audience. Yes, they're already. You can get the microphone there.
Erik, really enjoyed your talk. I was previously working for NPAL, so I was on the receiving end of those emails from Forto, and now I raised VC money on 2 months of runway left, so I'm super excited to be hitting this journey as co-founder and CEO. And I would say I'm a computer engineer by trade, and now I'm dividing my time between business development and acquiring clients, and I want to ask you how you divide your time between engaging with customers versus building and doing all the nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I also struggled with that a lot the last couple of days. At the moment, I try to still block out 1 day a week where I touch the code, but I try to do things that are among the riskiest things for the company at the moment. So for example, for us, for the new business, one very risky, or like rather risky assumption that we have is that we can get to an autopilot mode for a bunch of the use cases that we're building. And then obviously with AI, there's an element of non-deterministicness, non-determinism. So I really want to get my hands dirty on that and get a feeling myself and build a mental model in my head for what fails at the moment, what are the failure modes, what is our approach, do I feel that it makes sense? Do I have any thoughts on how we could improve it? What do I see when I speak to other people? And that enables me to also have conversations with other founders, other technical people, for example, when I'm in San Francisco, to say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're seeing, how do you think about that? There's many, many other elements where I think we have a fantastic team by now that I don't touch because I shouldn't maybe, and they're better at that, and it's maybe more of a commodity also to build.
Okay, yes.
You mentioned that now people that were previously not software engineers can do light engineering tasks. How has the skill set that you look for very technical positions changed?
The skill set has changed. I think I'm not sure it has changed that much, but I think we just hire less junior engineers, less junior core engineers. I think the role I was talking about is more sort of that AI engineer that works between the customer and the core platform. So I think there you can insert suddenly people who are enabled to contribute to the code base, but who are not sort of the classical engineers. I think when it comes to hiring classical software engineers, what I'm still looking for is people who are very entrepreneurial, who take ownership end to end, who are willing to empty the dishwasher. If that's the biggest thing that holds us back, to deliver against the customer, like literally, I think that as a founding engineer in the beginning, you need to do whatever it takes, and who are very smart, and who are willing to move very fast and work very hard.
It was wonderful actually. So my name is Nafis. I'm a techie by myself. I'm an architect. My question is about your entrepreneurial startup actually. Right now I'm just turning down 2 offers, one from Google and one from OpenAI. Both they asked me to move to SFO, but I'm just working on the stealth mode right now, so I'm not talking about my AI companies not so far. But I have some insecurities when I just think about starting my company, when I turn this very good offer on SFO. When you are at your entrepreneurial beginning, so how you deal with the insecurities when you come to your mind, whether I'm going to be succeed, or what exactly motivates you to drive further?
For all companies except the current one, I luckily never thought about failing. And it never bothered me as much. I remember how we built our first business plan for Forto, where we said, okay, so we have to hit 100 million revenue. So what do the people say on the internet, how fast you have to hit it? Okay, in that many time, in that many years, let's just build a plan that sort of hits that, right? It was like, okay, well, I think we thought, we'll anyway never hit that. It's like just a crazy fake number. And we didn't hit it at that time, but it somehow worked out. So what I want to say is, I think there we enjoyed the moment. We just enjoyed the ability to be an entrepreneur every day, be our own boss. Failing somehow was luckily not part of, we didn't have as big a mind share. Now it has a bit more because of my own level of ambition to the new thing. And it's not super helpful, but also an interesting experience. So sorry, I can't give you a good answer.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nathan. If you had the opportunity to completely reinvent the global shipping industry from scratch, what systems or innovation would you implement to enable end-to-end automation and freight forwarding? Because you complained that you would like to have.
Sounds like you're looking for a business idea to start. But I can give you one. What is crazy is that since 15 years, people try to solve visibility. So when we started out, we worked, you want to know at which point in time does the ship arrive. You want to know where is the truck that is supposed to arrive in 15 minutes at the customer's warehouse. Those things aren't solved. People tried it for 15 years, it doesn't work. So there's a company called Project 44. They raised a lot during COVID. They bought a lot of other visibility companies. We had that data. Our operators, they just wouldn't trust it. They knew, okay, this is like a ship ETA prediction from Project 44. I don't trust it. I will still check the website manually of the port, the Hamburg port website, for example. Someone should try to rethink about visibility in this industry. The other element, and then also I think, the whole visibility element for trucking isn't figured out, and that's just a really, really massive part. So of the 7%, 5.5% or 7% of GDP, 5.5% I think is truck-based logistics, and I think visibility is really not solved for that element. So that's something you must figure out, and it's also, I think, something where GenAI is not an unlock for. That's the biggest thing. I think GenAI can tackle many of the other things. International payments is another one. Still not super straightforward, and I think crypto is still abstracted away enough that it's easy. International payments and also the trust element is a very big one. So you still pay something like 1%. If a bank gives you something like a trusted payment situation, I forgot the exact name. That's a letter of credit, where basically, you sell me some goods, and I have to wire the money, but I don't want to wire it until like your container or like the container of Forto move, for example, arrives at my warehouse. So I give the money to the bank gives it to you once sort of the shipment arrives. That costs 1%. It's crazy, right? So I think someone should solve that as well.
So one of the things that I see a lot with startups is, I come from open source, I do data science and AI engineering, is that they don't utilize enough open source in the way that it's meant to be used. It's more like exploitation, right? There's this GitHub repo, we clone it, and we just build our own proprietary stack, and you kind of have your own Snowflake version of whatever you twisted together, and it becomes unmaintainable, and the open source stack moves away from you. I think this is a competitive advantage that a lot of European companies are not doing correctly. As part of there's no top-down policy to say, hey, we're going to be proactive contributors back to open source, which actually would strengthen the whole ecosystem. It's sort of like a commons, right? If everybody has better code to do exactly what we all want to do, then we all benefit. But it's kind of cordoned off as this is our proprietary IP. Let's not reveal this one bug fix, and let's everybody else suffer. And in a way, it kind of leads to this very anti-sharing mindset. So I'm wondering, what's your open source policy of your company?
Interesting. I think when you have the sheet product market fit, there's just so many more things on your mind that it's not the biggest priority to commit something back. If you have a really strong engineer for whom or her it is only a 3-minute thing to do, I think they should just do it. But mostly it takes a bit more time, I think, to do well, open the pull request, maybe someone has questions and so on. So frankly, I'm of the opinion that pre-product market fit, probably it's not the right investment of your time, because there's so many things you need to fix. At a point where you have a business, I agree, it would be great to give back, because we all live off that. But I really think it might not be the right priority early on, and we have, I think in Europe generally, much fewer big tech companies that have sort of the ability to invest time into like actual significant, meaningful open source progress. So I think that might be a reason for that.
I think there are two fallacies here, which is number one, the person that's contributing code back is actually learning from the experience, right? It's actually interacting with the community and becoming a better programmer. So you're basically getting training for your engineer for free by contributing.
Yeah.
And the second thing that's really nice is, as you contribute, those people get to know the people that are in the community, and you can recruit from them. I think this whole idea about sort of capture the talent and lock them in is a bit old-fashioned. And you should think of it as a marketplace where you have willing participants for developing the product, and it's a recruiting tool.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a good perspective. Thank you.
If I understood it right, you are one founder in the new company. Is this a deliberate decision, and if so, why?
Yeah, it was a deliberate decision. I've always had co-founders before, and I feel it. At this point, I have very strong opinions about the kind of company I want to build when it comes to how it's product first, the values, what is important now, what is important later. And I also felt that I have by all the failures of the past and all the learnings of the past. I have the ability to raise the first round, sell to the customers, and also build the first product. And finding a co-founder maybe wasn't the biggest need for the company in my mind also. So I thought, why don't I give it a shot, being a solo founder. I have not felt that, if you think about the same, for example, I have not necessarily felt that people who are not founders would have less ownership in the company. I've worked with people at Forto, for example, who have had certainly the same level of ownership like a founder, and they came in later. You just maybe have to find the right people, and then I think you can still build a great team of highly committed people, even though not everyone's a founder because they weren't there from the beginning.
Maybe last question, one last question. Leo has to pick, he has the microphone.
Hi Erik, you explained a little bit about what you're building currently, and you're selling into one of the most under-digitized industries, I think still is probably this construction, right? And maybe they do not really understand the potential of what's possible, they're caught in Outlook, whatever, right? So can you maybe give some tips about go-to-market, especially when you're talking to people who have never used ChatGPT or aware of what's possible in that regard, and how do you also enable them once you're talking to them?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I thought the same, but it's not true. Yes, it's an under-digitalized industry, but everyone, maybe not every operator, I'm not every operations clerk, but by now, the people in middle management and all the CEOs, they really know they have to have, or they really know they have to expose themselves to AI. They feel something crazy is happening, and they're actually very open to you coming in and showing what you're building. So I think it's a fantastic time to talk, if you have a vertical B2B AI product, to talk to potential customers. Everyone has budget to do an AI pilot. Everyone wants to talk about it at the moment. The only thing that's hard at the moment is knowing where you're just sort of abused as an idea provider versus where you are really building a solution that might be really valuable. So I think, many SaaS companies 10 years ago, if they would have had the traction for like pilots, paid pilots that you see now with GenAI, like vertical GenAI companies, it's like nuts. I think about the people from my cohort 10 years ago that started to build a company. If they would have been able to deploy paid pilots for their SaaS product, like you can do today, because everyone wants to see it, it's crazy. Everyone wants to have it. But then the problem is it might not convert. Everyone's just looking at it at the moment. So I think you have to be really paranoid about building a product that works, that your users love, and that creates a lot of value. And paid pilots mean something slightly less important these days. That's what we see.
Thank you, Erik. Thanks a lot. Big applause. So, I would say nothing more to add.